The morning sun rose over the Galactic Military Academy on planet Viridian 7. The sky was bright blue and not a single cloud could be seen. It was a perfect day for the final survival test. Cadet Jinho stood in the assembly area with 49 other cadets. They came from 12 different alien species across the galaxy. Jinho was one of only 5 humans in the group. He adjusted his backpack and checked his gear one more time. "Why do you carry so much weight?" asked Taril, a tall Zarathian cadet with silver skin and 4 arms. He pointed at Jinho's pack. "You look like you are going to war, not on a simple walk." Jinho smiled. "Just some basic supplies. Rope, a knife, some waterproof cloth, matches, and a few other things." Taril laughed, and several other alien cadets joined him. "Matches? What century are you from, human? We have plasma lighters that never fail. And rope? We have molecular cable that is 10 times stronger." A Krillian cadet named Voss walked over. His blue scales glittered in the sunlight. "The human way is outdated," he said. "Technology has made all those old tools useless. Why carry dead weight when our devices can do everything better?" Jinho did not argue. He had heard this many times before. Most alien species had advanced technology for thousands of years. They had forgotten the old ways of doing things. To them, human methods seemed primitive and silly. Lyra, an Atherin with pale green skin and large eyes, stood nearby. She was quiet, but watched the conversation with interest. "Maybe the human has his reasons," she said softly. "The only reason is that humans are slow to change," Voss replied. "They still cling to their primitive past." Commander Hyun, a human instructor with gray hair and a strong build, stepped onto the platform. Next to him stood 3 alien instructors. Commander Hyun had been teaching at the academy for 15 years. He had survived many dangerous situations on Earth's frontier colonies. "Attention, cadets!" Commander Hyun's voice was loud and clear. "Today begins your final survival assessment. You will travel 30 kilometers through the wilderness. You must reach the northern checkpoint before sunset tomorrow. You may use any equipment you brought, but remember that the terrain is rough." One of the alien instructors, a tall being with tentacles, spoke next. "The weather systems show perfect conditions for the next 72 hours. There will be no rain, no storms, and no complications. This test is about navigation and teamwork, not survival against nature." Commander Hyun frowned slightly but said nothing. Jinho noticed the look on his instructor's face. The commander did not seem to agree with the alien instructor's words. "You will be divided into groups of 8. The tentacled instructor continued. "Each group will take a different route. Communication devices will work within your group, but not between groups. This simulates a real mission where you are cut off from the main force." The cadets were assigned to their groups. Jinho found himself with Taril, Voss, Lyra, and 4 other aliens he did not know well. There was Korith, a heavy reptilian, Zena, a small flying species, Brack, a rock-like being, and Sula, who had fur and sharp teeth. "Great," Voss muttered. "We got the human with all his old junk." "The human has a name," Lyra said quietly. "It is Jinho." Voss shrugged. "Whatever. Just do not slow us down with your ancient methods, human." The groups set off in different directions. Jinho's group headed east into the valley. The landscape was beautiful. Tall trees grew on both sides of the path. A small river ran through the middle of the valley, its water clear and calm. Mountains rose high in the distance. Taril led the group because he had the highest grades in navigation. He held a small device that showed their route. "We follow this path for 10 kilometers, then turn north toward the hills," he explained. "Very simple. We should arrive early." The group walked at a steady pace. Voss and Brack talked about their new plasma weapons. Zena flew above them, scouting ahead. Korith complained about the heat. Sula said nothing, just followed along. Jinho walked at the back of the group. He studied the terrain carefully. He noticed how the river flowed, where the land was low and where it was high. He saw how the trees grew thicker in some areas. These were signs that any good survivalist would watch. After 2 hours, the group stopped for rest. They sat near the river and ate their rations. Tyrell checked his device. "We are making excellent time," he announced. "At this rate, we will finish the test 6 hours early." "Of course we will," Voss said proudly. "We are the best cadets in the academy. This test is too easy." Jinho looked at the sky. It was still perfectly blue, but something felt wrong. The air felt heavy. The birds that had been singing earlier were now quiet. The wind had stopped completely. "Do you notice anything strange?" Jinho asked. "Strange? Like what?" Tyrell replied. "The weather. It feels different." Voss laughed. "The weather systems predict clear skies for 3 days. Do you think your human senses are better than our advanced satellites?" "I am just saying it feels different," Jinho said calmly. "Feelings are not data," Voss stated. "This is why humans are behind. You trust feelings instead of technology." Lyra looked at the sky and then at Jinho. She said nothing, but her expression was thoughtful. The group continued walking. After another hour, they entered a deeper part of the valley. The river here was wider but still calm. The trees grew very close together. Tyrell checked his device again and smiled. "Perfect. We are exactly on schedule." Jinho adjusted his backpack straps. The heavy pack felt comfortable on his shoulders. He had trained with weight since he was young. His grandfather, who had been a wilderness guide on Earth, had taught him that good preparation meant carrying what you might need, not what was most convenient. "Tell me, human," Korith said as they walked. "Why do you carry rope? What could you possibly need it for?" "Many things," Jinho replied. "Building shelter, crossing rivers, climbing, securing equipment, making repairs. Rope has 100 uses. We have force fields for shelter, hover boots for crossing rivers, and gravity lifts for climbing," Korith said. "Your rope is useless." "Maybe," Jinho agreed. "But rope never runs out of battery power." This made a few cadets laugh, though not in a friendly way. They thought Jinho was making a joke about being poor or backwards. The group walked deeper into the valley. None of them knew that high in the mountains, something was going wrong. Weather satellites were beginning to malfunction. Dark clouds were forming with incredible speed. A storm was coming, and it would be unlike anything the Academy had ever seen. But for now, the sky above the cadets remained blue. Tyrell smiled at his device. Voss talked about how easy the test was. And Jinho walked quietly at the back, his rope and knife and waterproof cloth heavy in his pack, while the first drops of rain began to fall in the distant mountains. 6 hours had passed since the cadets began their test. Jinho's group had covered almost 15 kilometers. They were now deep in the valley, surrounded by tall trees and thick bushes. The small river had grown wider and moved faster. The sky was no longer blue. Dark gray clouds had appeared from nowhere, rolling over the mountains like a thick blanket. The temperature dropped quickly. A cold wind started blowing through the trees. Tyrell looked at his navigation device and frowned. "That is strange," he muttered. "The weather display is not working properly. It shows an error message." "Let me check mine," Voss said, pulling out his own device. His screen showed the same error. "This makes no sense. These are military-grade instruments. They do not just break." Zena landed on a branch above them. The small flying alien looked worried. "The air feels wrong," she said. "Something bad is coming." "Do not be dramatic," Tyrell replied. "It is just a small cloud system. The satellites predicted clear weather. This will pass quickly." Jinho looked at the dark clouds. They were moving fast, much faster than normal clouds. He had seen storms on Earth, and this looked similar to the dangerous ones. "We should find higher ground," he suggested. Higher ground? Why? Voss asked. The river, Jinho pointed at the water. Look at how fast it is moving now. If heavy rain comes, this valley could flood. Brack, the rock-like alien, laughed. Flood? You worry too much, human. We have emergency beacons. If there is real danger, rescue teams will come for us. Besides, Terriel added, the checkpoint is north, not up in the hills. If we go to higher ground, we will fail the test. Lyra studied the clouds carefully. Jinho might be right, she said. Those clouds look dangerous. You are both being paranoid, Voss declared. This is a controlled training planet. The Academy monitors everything. They would warn us if there was real danger. As if to prove Voss wrong, the rain started. It did not begin slowly. It came all at once like someone had opened a massive faucet in the sky. Water poured down so hard that the cadets could barely see 5 meters ahead. Take cover under the trees, Terriel shouted. The group ran to a cluster of large trees, but the trees provided little protection. The rain was too heavy. Within seconds, everyone was completely soaked. Voss tried his communication device. Command, this is Cadet Voss, Group 7. We need weather update. He waited, but there was no response. Command, do you hear me? Still nothing. He looked at the device. The signal is dead. There is too much interference. Try the emergency beacon, Korath yelled over the sound of the rain. Voss pressed the emergency button on his belt. A red light blinked, but nothing else happened. It is not connecting. The signal cannot get through. Panic started to show on the faces of the alien cadets. They had never been in a situation where their technology did not work. Their entire lives, they had relied on devices to solve problems. Now those devices were useless. The river! Sula suddenly shouted, pointing. Everyone turned to look. The small, calm river they had walked beside was gone. In its place was a raging torrent of brown water. It had grown from 2 meters wide to more than 20 meters in just minutes. Trees and debris floated rapidly downstream. How is that possible? Terriel's voice shook. Water cannot rise that fast. It can if enough rain falls in the mountains, Jinho said calmly. All that water flows down here. We need to move to higher ground now. But the test, Terriel started. Forget the test, Jinho said firmly. Look at the water. It is still rising. In 10 minutes, this area will be underwater. Zena flew up to get a better view, but the rain was too heavy. She came back down quickly. I cannot see anything up there. The rain is too thick. The water was now at their ankles. It had crept up from the river without them noticing. The current was strong, pulling at their legs. We have to go, Jinho said urgently. He looked around, trying to find the safest direction. The valley was surrounded by hills on both sides, but they were several hundred meters away. Which way? Lyra asked. She trusted Jinho's judgment now. Jinho pointed to the eastern hill. That way. The slope looks gentler. We can climb it faster. The group started moving, but it was difficult. The rain made the ground slippery. The water was rising rapidly, now up to their knees. Brack, whose body was made of heavy rock, struggled to move through the current. Korath had to help push him forward. They had only gone 50 meters when Terriel fell. He tried to stand up, but the current knocked him down again. Jinho grabbed his arm and pulled him up. Stay close together, Jinho shouted. Hold hands if you need to. Voss tried his beacon again and again, pressing the button desperately. Why is nothing working? This is impossible. The Academy has backup systems for the backup systems. Technology fails sometimes, Jinho said. That is why you need to know basic skills. I do not know basic skills, Voss shouted back, his voice full of fear. None of us do! My people have not needed them for 3,000 years! The terrible truth of his words hung in the air. These alien cadets, brilliant and educated, had no idea how to survive without their devices. They could pilot starships, operate quantum computers, and calculate complex mathematics. but they did not know how to survive in the rain. The water reached their waists. The current grew stronger. In the distance, they could hear other groups shouting. Everyone was in trouble. "The hill is too far," Korath yelled. "We will never make it." He was right. The water was rising too quickly. They would be swept away before reaching higher ground. Jinho looked around frantically. His mind raced through everything his grandfather had taught him. Then he saw them. Several large trees that had fallen, but not washed away. They were tangled together with vines near a small rise in the land. "There," Jinho pointed. "That higher spot. We can wait there." The group struggled toward the fallen trees. The water tried to pull them away with every step. Sula almost lost her footing, but Lyra caught her. Finally, they reached the small rise. It was barely a meter higher than the surrounding land, but it gave them a few precious minutes. They climbed onto the fallen trees, trying to stay above the water. But Jinho knew this was only temporary. The water was still rising. Soon this spot would be underwater too. "What do we do now?" Taril asked. His silver skin looked pale. "We are trapped." Jinho looked at the trees, the vines, and the debris floating past. An idea formed in his mind. It was risky, but it was their only chance. "I can build something," Jinho said. "A raft, something that floats, something big enough for all of us." "A raft?" Voss stared at him. "With what? Your bare hands?" "With these trees, these vines, and the rope in my pack," Jinho replied. "It is possible. I have done it before, in training." "That is insane," Brack said. "Building a raft takes tools, materials, time. We have none of those things." "We have everything we need right here," Jinho insisted. "But you have to trust me and do exactly what I say." The alien cadets looked at each other. They had mocked this human and his primitive methods. Now their lives depended on those same methods. The water reached the fallen trees. They had only minutes left to decide. The water swirled around the fallen trees. Jinho could feel the current getting stronger. Time was running out fast. He pulled off his backpack and opened it quickly. "Listen carefully," Jinho said to the group. His voice was calm but firm. "We are going to build a raft using these logs and vines. I need everyone to work together. Can you do that?" The alien cadets nodded. Fear had replaced their earlier pride. Even Voss, who had mocked Jinho the most, looked ready to listen. "Good." Jinho pulled out his rope. "First, we need to gather more logs. See those trees floating past? We need to catch them and bring them here." "How do we catch them?" Korath asked. "They are moving too fast." Jinho tied one end of his rope to a sturdy tree trunk. He made a loop at the other end. "Like this. We throw the loop around the log and pull it in. Who has good aim?" Zena raised her small hand. "I do. I can fly and catch things." "Perfect. But be careful. Do not get pulled into the water." Zena flew low over the flood, watching for good logs. When she saw one, she grabbed the rope loop and dropped it over the end of the log. "Got it!" she shouted. Jinho and Brack pulled the log toward them. It was hard work. The log was heavy and the current fought against them, but they managed to drag it to their small island. "We need at least 5 more logs this size," Jinho said. "Everyone help!" For the next 15 minutes, the group worked together in a way they never had before. Zena spotted logs. Jinho threw the rope. The stronger cadets pulled. Even Voss, despite his fear, helped drag logs through the water. When they had enough logs, Jinho began the next step. He pulled out his knife and started cutting vines from the trees. "We use these to tie the logs together. Lyra, Sula, help me cut vines. Make them at least 3 meters long." The 2 female cadets used Jinho's knife and a sharp piece of metal from Sula's gear. They cut vine after vine. Their hands got sore, but they did not stop. Jinho laid the logs side by side on the small rise. The water was now touching the logs. They had perhaps 10 more minutes before their position would be completely underwater. "Terrell, Voss, come here," Jinho called. "I am going to teach you how to tie a lashing knot. Watch carefully." Jinho demonstrated the knot, wrapping the vine around 2 logs in a specific pattern. His hands moved quickly but deliberately. Over, under, around, and through. Then pull tight. See? This holds the logs together. Terrell tried to copy the knot, but his 4 hands got tangled. "This is harder than it looks." "Keep trying," Jinho encouraged. "You will get it." Voss struggled too. His fingers were meant for pressing buttons, not tying knots. But slowly, with Jinho's patient instruction, both aliens learned the basic technique. "Now we all tie," Jinho said. "Each connection needs at least 3 vines. Make the knots as tight as you can." The group worked frantically. The rain continued to pour. The water rose higher and higher. But slowly, the logs began to form a platform. Jinho moved from person to person, checking their knots, retightening them, and showing them how to do it better. Brake, with his strong, rocky hands, proved surprisingly good at pulling the vines tight. Korith used his heavy weight to hold logs in place while others tied them. Everyone found a way to help. "We need cross beams," Jinho said. "Smaller pieces of wood across the main logs. This makes the raft stronger." They found smaller branches and pieces of debris. These were tied across the main logs, creating a grid pattern. The raft started to look more solid. "Is this really going to work?" Lyra asked quietly. She was helping Jinho tie one of the final connections. "It has to," Jinho replied. "And yes, it will. This is an old design. Humans have built rafts like this for thousands of years. They work." Lyra looked at the human with new respect. "Your people survived without technology for so long. We have forgotten how to do anything without machines." "Maybe both ways have value," Jinho said. "Technology is good, but basic skills matter too." The water reached their knees as they stood on the logs. The raft was almost complete. Jinho pulled out his waterproof cloth from his pack. "We can use this as a sail or a cover. But first, we need a rudder." He found a long, flat piece of wood and tied it to the back of the raft in a way that let it move side to side. "This will help us steer, not perfectly, but enough." Voss watched Jinho work with amazement. "How do you know all this?" "My grandfather taught me," Jinho explained as he secured the rudder. "He said that knowledge is the one tool that never breaks and never runs out of power. I did not really understand what he meant until now." "I understand now," Voss said quietly. "I am sorry for calling your methods primitive." "Forget it," Jinho said. "Right now we need to finish this raft. The water is getting too high." The last vines were tied. The last crossbeams were secured. Jinho tested each connection. Pulling hard on every joint, the raft groaned but held together. "Everyone, get on carefully," Jinho instructed. "Spread out evenly. Too much weight on one side and we will tip over." The cadets climbed onto the raft one by one. They sat where Jinho told them to sit. The raft sank lower into the water but stayed afloat. It worked. "It is holding," Terrell said with amazement. "We are actually floating." Jinho used his long branch to push away from the trees. The raft moved into the current. It spun slightly, but Jinho used the rudder to steady it. The small island where they had built the raft disappeared underwater seconds after they left. If they had waited any longer, they would have drowned. "We did it," Sula said softly. "We are alive." But Jinho was not celebrating yet. He stood at the back of the raft, holding the rudder, his eyes scanning the floodwaters. His face was serious and focused. "What is wrong?" Lyra asked. "We made it." "Listen," Jinho said. In the distance, they could hear shouting, other voices, other cadets calling for help. "There are others still out there," Jinho said. "Other groups trapped by the flood." "We should save ourselves," Korith suggested. Find high ground and wait for rescue. Jinho looked at the 8 aliens on his raft. They were safe now because he had saved them. But there were other cadets drowning in this valley, students like them, scared and helpless. "We have room on this raft," Jinho said firmly, "and I know how to steer it. We are not leaving anyone behind." "But it is dangerous," Voss protested. "What if we sink? What if it was you out there?" Jinho interrupted. "Would you want someone to try to help, or would you want them to save themselves?" Voss fell silent. Lyra stood up carefully. "I will help you look for them," she said. "My eyes are good. I can spot them in the rain." "Me too," Xena added. "I can fly short distances to guide us." One by one, the other cadets agreed. They would search for survivors. Jinho nodded. "Then let us go. Stay alert and stay balanced." He pushed the rudder to the left, steering the raft toward the distant cries for help. The rain fell harder. The flood rushed faster. But on that handmade raft, built with rope and vines and human knowledge, 8 cadets floated into danger to save others. The raft moved through the flooded valley like a leaf on a wild river. Jinho stood at the back, one hand on the rudder and one hand gripping a vine for balance. His eyes never stopped moving, watching the water, watching for danger, watching for survivors. "There!" Lyra shouted, pointing to the left. "I see them! On that rock!" Through the heavy rain, Jinho could barely make out shapes on a large boulder. The rock was surrounded by water. As he watched, a wave crashed over it. The people on the rock held on to each other desperately. "How many?" Jinho called back. "I count 7, Xena said. She had flown up briefly to get a better look. "One of them looks injured." Jinho studied the current. The water wanted to pull the raft past the rock. He would have to fight against the flow to reach them. It would be difficult and dangerous. "Everyone hold tight," Jinho warned. "This will be rough." He angled the rudder hard. The raft turned toward the rock, but the current pushed back. Jinho used his long pole to push against debris and guide the raft. His muscles strained with effort. Brake moved to the front of the raft. "I am heavy. I can lean out and grab them when we get close." "Good idea, but be careful," Jinho replied. "Do not fall in." The raft fought its way across the current. 50 meters, 40 meters, 30 meters. The people on the rock saw them coming. They waved frantically. "It is Instructor Mina!" Tyrell shouted with recognition. "And some of the other cadet groups." Instructor Mina was a human teacher from the academy. She stood on the highest point of the rock, helping others hold on. Her face showed relief when she saw Jinho's raft. 20 meters, 10 meters. Jinho used all his strength to keep the raft moving in the right direction. The current wanted to spin them around. Debris kept hitting the side of the raft, but Jinho held firm. "Get ready!" Jinho yelled. The raft came alongside the rock with a thump. Brake reached out his long arms and grabbed the rock to hold the raft steady, but the current was too strong. He could not hold on for long. "Jump now!" Instructor Mina shouted to her group. "Quickly!" The first cadet jumped onto the raft. He landed badly and almost fell off the other side, but Voss caught him. The second and third cadets jumped together, then the fourth. "I cannot hold much longer," Brack grunted. His rocky hands were slipping on the wet stone. Instructor Mina helped an injured cadet to the edge. His leg was hurt, and he could not jump well. "You have to jump," she told him. Jinho dropped the rudder and moved to the edge. "I will catch you. Jump on 3. 1, 2, 3!" The injured cadet jumped. Jinho caught him and pulled him onto the raft. The cadet cried out in pain, but he was safe. 2 more cadets jumped quickly. That left only Instructor Mina on the rock. "Come on!" Jinho called to her. But as he spoke, a large log hit the side of the raft. The impact made Brack lose his grip on the rock. The raft began to drift away. "Jump now!" everyone screamed. Instructor Mina jumped with all her strength. She flew through the air and landed hard on the raft. Tyrell and Korath grabbed her arms to keep her from sliding off. "I got you," Terrell said. The raft floated free from the rocks, spinning in the current. Jinho rushed back to the rudder and fought to control the spin. After a tense moment, he stabilized the raft again. Everyone breathed hard. The raft now carried 15 people instead of 8. It sat much lower in the water. Every small wave washed over the edges. "Is everyone okay?" Instructor Mina asked, checking on her group. The injured cadet's leg was badly bruised but not broken. One of the other rescued cadets was shaking from cold and fear but otherwise fine. Everyone had survived. "That was incredible," Instructor Mina said to Jinho. "You built this raft?" "We all built it," Jinho replied, gesturing to his original group. "I just showed them how." Instructor Mina looked at the construction. She saw the rope lashing, the vine bindings, and the simple but effective design. "Your grandfather would be proud," she said quietly. Jinho smiled briefly, but then his face became serious again. "We are too low in the water now. We need to redistribute the weight better." He arranged the people carefully, making sure the raft stayed balanced. The injured cadet was placed in the center where it was most stable. "I hear more voices," Zena called out. "Over there, to the right." Through the rain, they could see more cadets. This group had climbed into a large tree, but the water was rising fast. Soon, the tree would be underwater. "Can we take more people?" Lyra asked, worried. "We are already so heavy." Jinho looked at the raft. It was true that they were carrying a lot of weight. Taking more people was risky, but leaving them was not an option. "We will make it work," Jinho decided. "We have to try." He steered the raft toward the tree. This rescue was easier because the tree was tall and stable. The cadets climbed down from the branches and stepped onto the raft one by one. 5 more survivors joined them. Now 20 people crowded onto the raft. Water washed over the logs with every movement. The raft groaned under the weight. "This is too many," Voss said nervously. "We are going to sink." "We are not going to sink," Jinho said firmly. But he knew Voss was partly right. They were at the limit of what the raft could carry. Instructor Mina came to stand next to Jinho at the rudder. "We need to reinforce the raft," she said quietly. "Add more support." "I was thinking the same thing," Jinho agreed. "Do any of the new people have rope or vines?" They checked. 2 cadets had brought rope in their packs. One had a bundle of strong cord. It was not much, but it would help. "Good," Jinho said. "We will add these as extra lashing while we float. Lyra, Sula, can you help?" The 2 worked carefully, adding extra bindings to the weakest joints. It was difficult work while the raft moved through the flood, but they managed. "More people ahead," Zena reported. "Another group. 4 of them on a small rise." Jinho steered the raft toward them. These 4 cadets were standing in water up to their chests, holding onto a single tree. They looked exhausted and terrified. When they saw the raft, they cried with relief. The rescue went smoothly. The 4 climbed aboard, and the raft now carried 24 cadets and 1 instructor. It was dangerously overloaded, but everyone was still alive. "Any more?" Jinho asked Zena. She flew up into the rain, looking in all directions. "I see 1 more group, far ahead. Maybe 6 or 7 people." "Can we make it there?" Instructor Mina asked. Jinho studied the flood. The current was carrying them downstream at a good speed. He could see a large building in the distance on high ground. That was probably the old observation post he had read about in the Academy maps. The last group was between their current position and that building. They could try to rescue them on the way. "We can try," Jinho said. "But we need to lighten the load. Everyone, throw away anything you do not absolutely need. Equipment, packs, anything heavy." The cadets looked at their belongings. These were expensive devices, advanced technology worth thousands of credits, but they threw them into the flood without hesitation. Life was more valuable than equipment. The raft rose slightly higher in the water. It was still very heavy, but a bit more stable. "Hold on, everyone," Jinho announced. "One more rescue, then we head for that building in safety. We are almost there." He pushed the rudder to steer toward the final group of survivors. The rain showed no sign of stopping, and the flood continued to rage. But on that simple raft, built with human knowledge and alien cooperation, 25 souls floated toward safety. The raft moved toward the final group of survivors. Jinho could see them clearly now. 6 cadets clung to a partially collapsed building. The structure was sinking slowly into the flood. They had only minutes before it would be completely underwater. "Faster!" one of them screamed. "Please hurry!" But Jinho could not make the raft go faster. He could only guide it, using the current and his rudder. He angled the raft as best he could, trying to intercept the building before the current carried them past. "We are not going to make it," Korath said quietly. "Yes, we will," Jinho replied through gritted teeth. He used his pole to push against a large piece of debris, changing their angle slightly. Every small adjustment mattered. 50 meters, 40, 30. "Brack, get ready to grab," Jinho called. The heavy cadet moved to the front again. He reached out as far as he could. 20 meters, 10. The building was right there. "Jump!" Instructor Mina shouted to the survivors. The first 3 cadets jumped together and landed on the raft. The impact made the raft tilt dangerously. Water rushed over one side. "Balance!" Jinho yelled. "Everyone lean to the right!" The people shifted their weight. The raft steadied just as the next 2 cadets jumped. They landed safely. One cadet remained on the building. He looked young and terrified. His species had blue fur and large eyes. He stared at the gap between the building and the raft, shaking his head. "I cannot do it!" he cried. "I cannot jump!" "You have to!" One of his friends on the raft shouted back. "The building is sinking!" But the young cadet was frozen with fear. The building tilted more. Water rose around his legs. Jinho made a quick decision. He tied the rudder in place and grabbed his rope. "Hold this," he said to Instructor Mina, handing her the other end. Then he jumped into the water. "Jinho, no!" Lyra screamed. But Jinho was already swimming toward the building. The current pulled at him, but he was a strong swimmer. He reached the building and climbed up next to the frightened cadet. "Listen to me," Jinho said calmly. "I am going to tie this rope around both of us. Then we jump together, understand?" The young cadet nodded, too scared to speak. Jinho quickly wrapped the rope around them both, tying a secure knot. "On 3, 1, 2, 3. They jumped together. Jinho held the cadet tightly as they hit the water. The current tried to sweep them away, but the rope held. Everyone on the raft pulled them in, hand over hand, until they were safely aboard. The building collapsed completely moments later, disappearing beneath the flood. "That was stupid and brave," Instructor Mina said to Jinho, helping him back to the rudder. "Thank you." Jinho was breathing hard and dripping wet, but he smiled. Could not leave him there. The raft now carried 30 people. It was so overloaded that everyone had to stay perfectly still to keep it balanced, but they were all alive. "The observation building!" Zena called out. "I can see it clearly now." The large stone building sat on high ground ahead. It was old but solid, built long before the academy existed. Lights showed in some windows. People were there. Jinho steered the raft toward it. The current actually helped now, carrying them in the right direction, but they had to avoid debris and rough waters. Several times, large objects nearly hit the raft. Each time, Jinho managed to steer them clear. The journey felt like it took forever, but it was only 20 minutes. Finally, the raft reached the edge of the high ground. The water here was shallower. The raft scraped against the ground and stopped. "We made it!" Tyrell shouted. People climbed off the raft carefully, helping each other to shore. The injured cadet was carried by Brack and Korath. Everyone made it to dry land. The door of the observation building opened. More cadets ran out, including some humans. They had reached this building on their own and were safe. "How many survivors?" one of them called. 30 from the raft, Instructor Mina responded. Are there others here? 15. We got here just before the worst of the flood. That meant 45 cadets were safe, but the Academy had sent out 50 for the test. 5 were still missing. As if in answer, another voice called from the water. Help! Over here! Everyone turned. Another raft was floating toward the building. This one was smaller, but also built from logs and vines. A human woman stood at the back, steering it just like Jinho had. That is Cadet Yunji, someone said. She is in my class. Yunji's raft carried 8 more cadets. She guided it to shore expertly. Her passengers climbed off, all safe. 53 total, Instructor Mina counted. Wait, that is more than the 50 who started the test. Some instructors were in the valley too, Yunji explained. I picked them up along the way. Jinho and Yunji looked at each other and smiled. They did not need to speak. Each understood what the other had done. Everyone moved inside the observation building. It was crowded but warm and dry. The cadets collapsed on the floor, exhausted but grateful to be alive. Instructor Mina stood in the center of the room. Listen, everyone. We will stay here until the storm passes and rescue ships can reach us. You all did incredibly well today. Nobody died. That is what matters most. The humans saved us, Voss said loudly. His voice carried through the room. We would all be dead if not for Jinho and Yunji. Our technology failed, but they knew what to do. Teriel stood up. His silver skin was covered in mud, and his 4 arms hung tired at his sides. But his voice was strong. I must say something. I am ashamed. This morning I laughed at the human ways. I called them primitive. I thought my technology made me superior. He looked at Jinho. I was wrong. You saved my life. You saved all our lives. I am sorry. Me too, Lyra added quietly. My whole species depends on advanced systems. We have forgotten basic survival. Today we remembered how helpless that makes us. One by one, alien cadets stood and thanked the humans. Some cried, some bowed. All of them had learned something important. Jinho felt embarrassed by all the attention. You all helped build the raft, he said. You all worked together. That is what mattered. But you showed us how, Sula replied. Without you, we would not have known where to start. The storm raged outside for 3 more hours. Then, slowly, it began to weaken. The rain became lighter. The wind calmed. When the clouds finally parted, rescue ships appeared in the sky. Commander Hyun was on the first ship to land. He jumped out before it fully stopped and ran into the building. His eyes scanned the crowd, counting heads. When he confirmed everyone was safe, his shoulders sagged with relief. Report, he said to Instructor Mina. All cadets accounted for, sir. No casualties. Some minor injuries. 2 rafts built by Cadet Jinho and Cadet Yunji rescued everyone after technology failed. Commander Hyun looked at Jinho. There was something in his expression. Pride, yes, but also sadness. This was a test, he said quietly, not just of survival, but of preparation. The Academy Board wanted to see what would happen if technology failed. We disabled the satellites and communication systems on purpose. He paused. But we did not expect a real storm. That was not planned. What should have been a controlled exercise became a real emergency. Angry murmurs spread through the room. The test had been too dangerous. However, Commander Hyun continued, raising his voice, because of this accident, we learned something crucial. Most of our cadets are helpless without technology. That is unacceptable. Today, 2 humans saved 53 lives using basic skills that every soldier should know, but that we stopped teaching centuries ago. He walked to Jinho and Yunji. You 2 will receive the highest honors. But more importantly, you have changed how this academy teaches. In the weeks that followed, news of the incident spread across the galaxy. the Galactic Military Academy Board held an emergency meeting. They made a historic decision. All cadets, regardless of species or specialization, would now be required to learn what they called human survival protocols. This included building without tools, navigating without devices, surviving without technology, and working with basic materials. Jinho was asked to help design the new training program. On his first day as an assistant instructor, he walked into a classroom filled with 200 alien cadets. They all looked at him with respect and curiosity. "Today," Jinho began, "I am going to teach you how to tie knots. It might seem simple, but knots have 1,000 uses. They can save your life. They can build a shelter. They can rescue your friends. So watch carefully." He held up a piece of rope and began to demonstrate. Every cadet watched with complete attention. Nobody laughed. Nobody called it primitive. In the back of the room, Commander Hyun observed the lesson. He smiled, remembering what Jinho's grandfather had once told him. Knowledge is the one tool that never breaks and never runs out of power. The galaxy had advanced technology beyond imagination. Ships traveled faster than light. Computers could calculate infinity. But on that day, in that classroom, the future of the galactic military was learning the ancient wisdom of tied knots and basic survival. And in the vast reaches of space, humanity's reputation changed. They were no longer seen as primitive. They were recognized for what they truly were. The species that survived without the crutch of technology, the people who remembered how to live with their hands and their minds, the teachers who could show others how to endure when everything else failed. Jinho tied his knot and held it up for the class to see. 200 alien hands began practicing the same pattern. And somewhere, far away on Earth, the spirit of a wise old grandfather smiled.